The protagonist was once a writer who crafted a story about a tragic villain. But after finishing his work, something strange happened. He received a mysterious letter that pulled him straight into the world he created. When he woke up, he found himself lying on an unfamiliar bed. His body felt different, and when he looked in the mirror, the reflection showed crimson hair, a sly smile, and sharp, unreadable eyes. A chilling realization hit him. He had taken over the body of the villain he once wrote about. This villain, known for his unmatched strength, belonged to a family once feared across the empire. Their bloodline carried traces of dark heritage, a mix of human and forbidden powers which once made them mighty. However, 6 powerful families united to bring them down, leading to the family's downfall. This betrayal fueled the villain's hunger for revenge, but all his efforts ended in failure. In this world, the protagonist now faced a grim future, only days away from a brutal attack planned by the knights of those 6 families. With danger closing in and no second chances, he must find a way to change his doomed fate before it's too late. The protagonist, now teamed up with a mysterious guide, is told about a special paper that can answer any question written on it. Some answers are free, but important ones come at a heavy price. Without wasting time, the protagonist asks how to return to his original world. The answer hits hard. It's impossible. Though he expected it, hearing it still leaves a heavy feeling inside him. Shifting focus, he asks how to use mana and unlock special abilities. This time, the knowledge is shared freely, flooding his mind in an instant. As the energy begins to move through his body, he feels a spark of excitement. He discovers the first ability, Darkness, which allows him to steal someone's 5 senses. Then comes Killing Intent, a fierce aura that can freeze regular people in fear. Trying it out, he feels its power and gains a little hope. The final and most thrilling skill is Position Transfer 1, allowing him to swap places with any object nearby. Although the range is limited to a small area for now, it's enough to make him dream bigger. Determined to get stronger, he begins practicing right away, eager to master these new powers and face whatever challenges come next. The protagonist, gasping for air, pushed through the burning forest, knowing that even if he escaped, only danger awaited. Instead of running blindly, he decided to find the hidden gate that would lead him into another world, one left weakened after a fierce battle with humans. He hoped they might accept him during their desperate times. But things didn't go smoothly. Felt and his knights had already arrived, spreading out to hunt him down. Hiding carefully, the protagonist struggled to locate the gate. He had a rough idea of where it was but accidentally stepped on a twig, making a noise that gave away his position. Felt, now serious, unleashed massive strength, tearing apart everything to catch him. Time was running out, and with only 2 position transfers left, fighting wasn't an option. He had to find the gate. Feeling desperate, the soul inside Adele's body tried to ask her true spirit for help. But there was a heavy price, either 100 gold coins or a powerful relic. Furious at the unfair demand during such a critical moment, the protagonist barely had time to react before Felt's brutal attack slammed him into a tree. Lying hurt, he faced Felt's sword ready to strike. After promising to meet the captain again someday, the protagonist felt frustrated that his target had escaped into the dark and dangerous demonic realm. Time passed, and the scene shifted to the protagonist sitting alone, chewing dried meat. Deep in thought, he wondered how long it had been since he crossed the gate and entered this strange dungeon. Unlike ordinary ones, this place was man-made, built using forbidden arts. As he explored, he found jerky neatly placed on a bed, making him wonder if it was left to guard some hidden treasure. A special barrier stood before him, strong enough to deflect any blade from the front. Nearby, a stone guardian stood silently, its creepy presence warning him that crossing the barrier would lead to instant defeat. While thinking about his next move, a glowing note appeared. It was a warning. The protagonist was being cautioned for bending the rules earlier when he tried using Felt's sword as a sacrifice. Though the trick wouldn't work again, he was lucky to avoid any punishment. As he studied the surroundings, a strange stone on the wall caught his eye. When he touched it, a firm voice told him he lacked the right to use its function. Realizing it might be the key to unlocking the barrier, he prepared for what would come next. The powerful figure believed the pest would soon fade away, so he didn't bother much, focusing instead on his daughter's important exam. He even thought he might gain a useful helper if things went well. Meanwhile, the protagonist instantly regretted leaving the protected domain and rushed back when he saw a huge wolf outside, ready to tear him apart. Staring at the stone-like beast, he realized breaking the barrier would only land him in deeper trouble. Then, a sudden idea sparked. The creature was made of stone, which meant he could use his ability on it. Acting fast, he switched places with the wolf, trapping the monster inside the barrier and setting himself free. The wolf struggled but couldn't escape. Without wasting time, the protagonist sprinted ahead, only to face an even scarier creature, a monstrous bug. Quickly understanding that each level held a terrifying mission, he smartly kept using his position-swapping skill, trapping the stone beasts again and again. After surviving these challenges, he finally reached the last area of the hidden domain. A mysterious voice welcomed him warmly, surprising him with its strange friendliness toward a human, but something deeper seemed to be waiting ahead. The protagonist stands trapped inside, knowing that stepping outside means walking straight into a trap. Forces are already gathering, ready to seize him the moment he appears. Surrendering isn't an option either, as he's tied to the dangerous arson family. If the wrong people find out who he is, it will be over for him. Quickly, he hides the family insignia on his neck to avoid being recognized. Meanwhile, the troubled knight he encountered earlier keeps slamming his sword against the barrier, shouting to be released. The knight warns that a powerful figure is approaching, but the protagonist has no idea who it could be. Suddenly, everything clicks. The hidden domain he stumbled into isn't random. It's actually a secret training ground where high-ranking families sharpen the skills of their children. Realizing the situation is far worse than he thought, the protagonist pulls out a special notebook to contact his true self. To get critical information, he's forced to sacrifice a chunk of his precious energy instead of using treasures. The answer he gets shakes him. The person closest to him right now is none other than Renee, the youngest daughter of a fearsome family leader. Feeling the pressure tighten around him, he knows escaping won't be easy. The protagonist stood frozen, struggling to come up with an excuse to survive the coming moments. Fear weighed heavy on him, knowing if the truth was exposed, he would be punished immediately. Yet strangely, the powerful man, Kree, hadn't made a move. Instead, he asked his daughter if she had cleared the domain. After she confirmed, Kree ordered the protagonist to follow him. Feeling helpless, the protagonist obeyed, unable to use his special note anymore due to lack of strength. Inside the bear's family mansion, Kree dismissed the others, making the protagonist secretly hopeful for an escape until he noticed hidden guards keeping a close watch on him. In Kree's private office, a serious conversation unfolded. Kree proudly mentioned that his daughter had completed her final task but questioned her resolve about joining the training school. When she firmly agreed, Kree paused, then curiously asked about the human she had met during the reward stage. Remembering how the protagonist had amazed her with his strength, she spoke highly of him. This made Kree even more interested. Though he approved his daughter's admission to site and school, his real attention stayed fixed on the mysterious human who had cleared the domain alone and claimed the powerful Eye of Superbia, proving he was no ordinary person. Adel has finally rid himself of the poison inside his body, using his position transfer ability. After managing to force it out, he's relieved, knowing the horrors that could have followed if something worse had teleported instead. Despite the danger, he chooses not to kill the poisonous creature, as it could alert the demon patriarch. As he lies down, the tiny creature snoozing beside him, he feels at peace for the first time in days. But then his status window opens, alerting him to an upgrade in his abilities. While his position transfer has leveled up, the mana cost is now too demanding. Adel wonders how to increase his mana pool, realizing there is a way to strengthen it. Meanwhile, Renee, still distant after the loss of her mother, remains unimpressed by Adel's plans. She's been ghosting him for days, and he feels like an outsider in her life. Kree, the demon patriarch, summons both Adel and Renee. He warns Renee about her destiny in the dangerous Saiten school, where death is a constant threat. Despite this, she remains determined to attend, and Adel sees it as an opportunity to increase his strength and connections. He agrees to go, requesting something related to mana, which the demon patriarch finds amusing. However, Kree is unaware that the poison has already been removed from Adel's body. Kree offers to help Adel increase his mana, sharing a family treasure for his safety. The protagonist channels his demonic energy and declares he will teach humans the cultivation technique of his family, surprising and shocking Adel. The demon patriarch asks a powerful entity to bestow the demon powers upon a human. As the protagonist finishes his chant, his body glows with purple energy. The patriarch smiles, impressed by his mental strength as the protagonist retains his sanity even after the power boost. Adel realizes that this technique allows him to receive mana directly, essentially giving him an endless supply of power. The protagonist notices that the human family has connections to the 7 deadly sins, but the patriarch doesn't worry about betrayal, trusting that the poison worm will deal with any potential threats. He tells the author, who is shocked to learn of this connection, to leave. Later, the protagonist meditates in the forest, thinking it's the perfect place to practice. As he struggles with his powers, he asks for help, realizing he can never use human mana again. A powerful entity watches him from the sky, calling him a disgrace for carrying the blood of a traitor. Despite this, the entity chooses not to kill him, feeling a strange kinship with him. It decides to bestow upon him a mark of pride, a symbol of its power. The entity warns him not to lose control or it will drive him insane. Now with incredible strength, the protagonist knows he has a better chance of surviving in this harsh dimension. He fears his body may be covered with markings. Suddenly, someone is spying on him. It's Renee. They both are shocked by this, as her father didn't want her to know anything about it. A month later, the protagonist's mana supply has grown significantly. He believes he will surpass the heirs of all 6 houses soon. Meanwhile, he wonders why Renee has been training outside his house rather than in the designated grounds. To his surprise, she's not avoiding him anymore. He suspects she may think he's some kind of priest who can communicate with the powerful entity. The protagonist finds himself caught in a tricky situation with Renee, the Demon King's daughter. Though she tries to maintain a cold demeanor toward him, it's clear that her pride and his strength are creating tension. He, acting as her bodyguard, is merely following orders, but he can't help but notice that she's testing him. Renee, however, isn't easily manipulated. She picks up on his interest in a nearby domain and decides to tag along. She reveals that she's forgotten something important, her training preparation. To her surprise, Adele becomes concerned about her safety but cannot deny her wishes. They both set out to conquer a dangerous domain known as the Domain of the Undead, once ruled by necromancers. However, it is now abandoned and filled with undead soldiers. Renee's knowledge of the domain makes her indispensable in this mission, but Adele is worried about the risks of taking her along. She, however, already has a plan. Using a secret exit from the mansion, she sneaks out with him. Despite his reservations, Adele realizes that he's powerless to stop her. The duo reaches a misty mountain range, and as they make their way forward, Adele asks how much longer the journey will take. This question annoys the protagonist, realizing he made a mistake. Despite the awkward moment, they continue on. The protagonist, preparing for the upcoming test, realizes the severity of the challenge as Ares reveals the opponent, a powerful figure born from light. This individual is none other than Nanaisel, the head of the Nanai house, who is also closely linked to the protagonist of the main story. Known for his unmatched skill, Nanaisel is a one-man army who has taken down entire demon houses alone. As the candidates prepare for the test, they fear they will be crushed by his immense strength, even though the test will only see him using 10% of his power. The protagonist wonders how any of them could possibly overcome such a challenge. Teams are formed, with the top 8 selected separately from the rest. The protagonist's team, consisting of Kina, Chris, and Sanchez, doesn't seem impressive at first glance, especially with Sanchez's hostile attitude toward him. As the team members showcase their abilities, the protagonist remains calm, observing their skills carefully. Chris demonstrates his mana transformation abilities, while Kina offers support through prayer, though her abilities seem weak. Sanchez shows his strength as a tank-type fighter. The protagonist, using his teleportation ability, surprises his team, leaving them in awe. The team forms a strategy, and the second exam is about to begin. The protagonist and his team are thrown into an intense and overwhelming exam against the legendary Sword Saint, where each group faces instant defeat. Group after group is destroyed, and even the protagonist's team struggles with the brutal reality of the test. As the groups continue to fail, the protagonist realizes there's more to this exam than meets the eye. There must be a hidden requirement for success. He figures out that the key lies in persevering for as long as possible against the Sword Saint's impossible strength. When his group is finally called, the protagonist confidently leads them into battle, determined to last longer than any group before them. His plan is to outlast the Sword Saint's onslaught, using strategy to buy time. As the fight unfolds, the team takes heavy hits, with Sanchez barely holding up under the pressure. Despite being pushed to the edge, the protagonist holds on to his belief that there's a way to win. Even when the Sword Saint's attack breaks their defenses, he stays focused, warning his team of the next strike. As the fight grows more desperate, the protagonist prepares for a final, dangerous confrontation, intending to face the Sword Saint head-on, ready to make his move. The intensity of the fight builds, and the team is on edge, but the protagonist's resolve remains unshaken. The protagonist faces the Sword Saint's final attack, but with his strategy in mind, he instructs Sanchez to endure without relying on Chris. The Sword Saint's strike nearly destroys Sanchez's armor, sending him flying. Seizing the opportunity, the protagonist activates a position transfer, switching places with Sanchez. He then focuses on the Sword Saint's weapon, successfully disarming him. With his black dagger aimed at the Sword Saint's throat, it seems like a guaranteed victory, but the Sword Saint quickly retaliates, kicking the protagonist so hard that blood pours from his mouth. However, the protagonist activates his darkness ability, shrouding the area in darkness. Thanks to Chris's earlier barrier, he survives the brutal kick and traps the Sword Saint in the void. Confident in his power, he prepares to strike, but the Sword Saint surprises him, reappearing in front of him. Despite this, the protagonist uses his mastery of darkness to unleash hundreds of dimensional daggers, piercing the Sword Saint's body and ending the fight. With the Sword Saint defeated, the instructors and teammates are left in awe. The protagonist's victory impresses even the heirs, but the fight isn't over yet. The final step requires the protagonist to plunge his blade into the Sword Saint's body, showing his ruthless side. Meanwhile, tensions rise between Fran and Renee, setting the stage for an impending battle between the two. Lady Renee, filled with anger and determination, is ordered by a woman to become her slave, pushing her even further towards a violent reaction. Without hesitation, Renee charges at her opponent, determined to attack. However, their clash is halted by an instructor who warns them that fighting within the campus is strictly forbidden. The students watching are stunned by the intensity of the situation as two powerful prospects nearly collide. Renee reluctantly sheathes her sword, while the woman, Laurel, shivers in fear. Renee, with a confident and sarcastic smile, then checks on Adele, wiping his sweat and praising his performance. This moment of care draws further criticism from Laurel, who disapproves of the closeness between Renee and Adele, still harboring prejudice. As Renee moves onto the stage, Laurel steps in to challenge Adele, trying to manipulate him with her allure. However, Adele remains unfazed and dismisses her advances, focusing on Renee's performance instead. As the battle progresses, the Sword Saint, a formidable figure, faces off against Renee. The intense battle ends with Renee effortlessly slicing the Sword Saint in half, shocking everyone in attendance. As she returns to the crowd, the students, including Adele, are in awe. Renee's strength is undeniable, and Adele can't help but wonder how powerful she truly is. The entrance exam concludes with the heirs of the 7 deadly sins demonstrating their prowess by easily defeating the fake Sword Saint. The instructor, Ares, announces that all who participated in the combat test, regardless of their results, are now official trainees of Site An. However, he warns them that their journey will be a grueling one. The top performers, including the heirs and the protagonist, are granted access to the armory as a reward. Before entering, one trainee, Bolton, excitedly asks if they can take multiple weapons, but Ares informs him they can only select one. The group enters a hidden armory resembling more of a dungeon than a traditional weapons room where they will be evaluated as they exit. Bolton eagerly picks a blackthorn crown while the protagonist hopes to find a powerful artifact. Inside the armory, trainees face the challenge of choosing between numerous weapons and artifacts, some with unclear properties. The protagonist carefully considers each item, rejecting the weak ones in favor of something more useful. As the protagonist inspects a mysterious magic case, the tension rises with the uncertainty of what the final item will be. What will they choose, and what will it cost them? The story continues as the protagonist, who has faced numerous hardships, becomes stronger and more determined. With his unique abilities and quick thinking, he navigates through challenges. He discovers hidden truths about his past, and his resilience shines through. Despite the adversities, his will to succeed and protect those he cares about keeps him going. Each moment of struggle pushes him closer to his ultimate goal. His journey is one of self-discovery and growth as he faces both physical and emotional battles. The protagonist is confronted by Baltan, who initially approaches with a friendly apology. However, the handshake turns into a trap as Baltan unexpectedly locks the protagonist's hand in a painful grip. Baltan, known for his intense desire to challenge only the strongest, shows his true nature by forcing a fight. Despite the pain, the protagonist uses his quick thinking to switch positions with Baltan's sword, tapping him on the shoulder. While Baltan laughs, seeing this as fuel for his battle-hungry spirit, Lady Renee intervenes with a powerful aura, warning Baltan of the consequences if he continues. Realizing that a fight with both her and the protagonist could be too risky, Baltan backs down for now. Later, the protagonist, feeling stronger and more confident, enjoys a refreshing morning. He tries on the practical school uniform and is eager to meet Lady Renee. When he sees her in her uniform, he can't help but compliment her, causing her to blush. After a brief mix-up regarding his guard duties, they decide to take a stroll around the city. Despite the recent war, the city feels peaceful and they enjoy a pleasant walk. They share a meal at a street food stall, and the protagonist is delighted to see Lady Renee showing a more human side. The two share a quiet, happy moment that the protagonist knows his peaceful days are numbered. The protagonist encounters an unexpected moment when an artifact reacts to a powerful energy, causing one of its jewels to lose its shine. Despite this, Lady Renee remains unaware of the event, adding to the mystery. This triggers the protagonist's curiosity, making him eager to investigate further, especially since he suspects the artifact may be tied to the first Demon King. Their walk through the city ends, and the next day, they head to Site N for the entrance ceremony where the headmaster and instructors address the new students. The protagonist overhears some students disrespecting the headmaster, who is a powerful figure. When the ceremony begins, Diana, the top cadet, and Bal and take the honors, with the protagonist observing their behavior. Renee, uninterested in competition, is focused on seeking revenge on her mother rather than winning. As the ceremony wraps up, the protagonist's name is assigned to Class A, while Lady Renee is placed in Class C, which seems to please her. However, things take a turn when the protagonist is confronted by a hostile student, Samuel, a descendant of gluttony, who challenges him despite being the one at fault. The protagonist, trying to avoid trouble, apologizes, but Samuel's behavior leaves him uneasy. Meanwhile, in the faculty room, a conflict between instructors Aries and Idea arises, with the headmaster intervening to mediate. The tension suggests deeper struggles ahead. The first day of classes at the Royal Academy begins, and the protagonist, Adele, feels the weight of his misfortune as he faces an irritating peer, Laura, the heir of lust. She constantly bothers him with her arrogance, even attempting to make him her slave again, all while another classmate, Samuel, adds to the tension with his rude threats. Just as things escalate, instructor Idea enters, commanding immediate respect and silencing everyone. She introduces herself as the notorious Legion of Calamity, known for her deadly reputation, having killed thousands at Pollock River. The class soon learns that their training will focus on hunting humans, a task that leaves Adele indifferent, though intrigued by the powerful instructor. She also mentions that, aside from hunting skills, the cadets will undergo stamina training on the Academy's massive training grounds. During the session, instructor Idea creates an illusion of an army of human crusaders, showcasing her incredible magical abilities. To test her students, she challenges Adele to face these illusions and reach her. She dares him to repeat his previous act of stabbing, testing both his skill and courage, showing that she, too, has been keeping a close eye on him. The training session was intense, with the cadets facing off against an army of human clones. The instructor set a challenge for the protagonist to defeat a leader in the middle of the army. Confident, the instructor believed it would be an easy task, but the protagonist swiftly showed how easily he could close the distance and take control. In a split second, the protagonist was behind the instructor, dagger in hand, leaving the confident smile wiped off the instructor's face. Though the instructor was protected by a barrier, she still acknowledged the protagonist's skill and gave him a passing grade. The rest of the class followed, trying to break through the human army, but the task was far from easy. The cadets struggled to fight off the human clones, some even getting overwhelmed. The protagonist couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed by their poor performance, but he knew his position transfer skill was broken and set him apart. As the next cadet, Samuel, took his turn, he demonstrated overwhelming power with his magic, unleashing a tornado of destructive energy. It was a display of raw power, and the protagonist was impressed. However, despite Samuel's strength, the instructor remained unscathed and unimpressed, showing just how tough the challenges would get. The atmosphere thickened as the class realized they had only just begun. The test continues with cadets facing their harsh reality. Samuel tries his best but ultimately fails, his magic impressive but not enough to surpass the instructor's army of human puppets. Instructor Idea reveals how easily leaders can be replaced, showing that magic alone won't win the day. Samuel is visibly frustrated, but he knows better than to argue, retreating in disappointment. Adele observes Samuel's struggle, realizing his overconfidence led to his downfall. Next, Laurel Front steps up, her arrogance filling the air. She attempts to command the puppets, calling them minions, but her words falter as she realizes her power has no effect on them. She's left scrambling, hoping to find a way out. When she looks to Adele for help, he remains indifferent. Seeing her in distress, Instructor Idea sends the puppets to attack. Laurel is swiftly overwhelmed, unable to defend herself. The entire class watches as she begs for help, but none come. Adele, uninterested in helping, notes her lack of self-reliance. Amid the chaos, Adele notices a pink-haired girl who seems to have healing powers. He makes a mental note to approach her later. However, Instructor Idea orders Adele to assist Laurel back to the classroom. Reluctantly, Adele mocks Laurel, reminding her of her weakness. Before the class ends, Instructor Idea gathers the cadets, stressing the importance of learning their limits. Defeat is a lesson pushing them to grow stronger and understand their flaws. The protagonist is beginning to realize that his new school environment is far from ordinary. He notices the random class placements, a stark contrast to how human imperial schools usually organize students based on ability. Instructor Idea, who briefly mentions the concept of synergy, has a particular focus on one student who passed the test, drawing attention to him. While the protagonist awkwardly thanks her, the feeling of being watched by his classmates becomes uncomfortable. Samuel, a hostile batchmate, seems eager to pick a fight, furthering the protagonist's concern that forming his own faction might be impossible with constant interference from others. The rest of the lessons proceed uneventfully, with the protagonist attending a theoretical class about the demonic realm and human weaknesses. Though the lessons are interesting, they remind him of his previous life, leaving him feeling defeated even on the first day. During a break, the protagonist attempts to speak with a girl who has healing powers, but their brief interaction only draws unwanted attention. Realizing it could make things awkward for her, he quickly exits the situation. Later, Samuel enters the restroom and once again, the two clash, with their animosity reaching new heights. Samuel insults the protagonist, who retaliates with a sarcastic remark. The tension escalates until they are interrupted by their instructor, who calmly diffuses the situation, keeping the confrontation from reaching its peak.